Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Do we live in Alice in Wonderland's world of beyond the looking glass? This is one crazy, or should I make it nicer and say interesting, world that we live in today. There's supposed to be elections, national elections in the United States in November. But now it looks like that could be postponed, and Israel could go to fourth elections in November. This is crazy stuff, folks. Really just Alice in Wonderland's beyond the looking glass. We're going to be talking about this topic, how crazy things are. And we're going to be talking about a very huge phenomena that's going on right now that most people don't know about, and that is the number of children globally that go missing every single year. I'm not talking about 5 or 50 or 500 or 5,000. But in different countries, some are 10,000 a year, 20,000 a year, 150,000 a year. Even in Western countries, not just Asian countries, etc. Where are these children? We're going to be speaking about this, that most of you and even I did not hear about these headlines until just several days ago. That's been coming out now. So all of this is coming up on the show. I want to encourage you all to call in if you have any comments or questions. During the show, we are live if you're listening on Sunday morning between 9 to 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, or if it's between 4 to 5 p.m. Holy Time right here in the land of Israel. That means that we're live and you can call in. Join us in the chat room. It's on our website at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and our numbers to call in are on our website there as well at the top of the page. Just find our numbers there. And I want to say hi to people who are listening in from all over the world. It's great to see you here. And again, will there be elections in November? I'm not talking just about America. I'm talking about Israel. Fourth election's a possibility? We'll be right back.
Always challenging the status quo. Hello, I'm Rod Bryant on Beyond the Matrix here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I want to encourage you to listen each week, every Wednesday at the same time, for an amazing show that will challenge you, inform you, and inspire. News, views, and wisdom for the nations here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Don't forget, Beyond the Matrix every week, Wednesday, here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Well, you know, we talk about coronavirus and how it's disrupted the entire globe and the economies of the countries and people's careers and businesses, etc. But there's another upheaval possibly coming up in November, and that is election time. Will there be an election in Israel at the time of that in the U.S.? And in fact, there's just been an article that's come out last week about U.S. President Donald Trump saying that he's thinking maybe to delay the votes in November, the elections, because of the coronavirus, and he's thinking the the voting will not be fair. It could be rigged. And what's going to happen there? And in Israel, it's a political thing. We have demonstrations in the streets almost every night. Loud noise. We had a giant one last night, especially on Saturday night. It's summertime. It's hot. People are coming out. Can't do anything else. Everything else is pretty much closed here. So they're going into the streets and complaining. They couldn't get Netanyahu out with elections, with the voting. The majority of the people voted for the Likud, and he was able to get the coalition together. So if they can't get him out with with voting, they're trying to force him out by marching in front of his home in the streets at night. So here to tell us more about what is going on, we have joining us Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. He's a researcher, former lecturer at Ben-Gurion University, and has authored over 70 books and 400 research papers on science, history, and more. He commentates on Mideastern world issues. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. All right, and Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem is getting a phone call, it seems.
Sorry
all right.
about that.
You have the same ringtone as my husband. Okay.
There's nothing intentional about that, I assure you.
All right. So this is crazy. You know, in November, they're supposed to be going to elections in the United States. And we already had our third elections inside of just about a year. And now it looks like BP is saying we will possibly go again to elections. This after Corona has destroyed so much of the economy, people's jobs, employment, careers, businesses, economy, taxes, etc. And now another election, which is going to cost us millions of shekels. Why don't you answer that as briefly as you can? Then we already have a caller, so go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I'm not a legal expert, certainly not in America. I don't know if there's any possibility, legal, constitutional possibility, to delay elections in the United States.
So that has to go through the Congress. They said it's not in the hands of Donald Trump, of President Donald Trump. It is in the hands of the Congress, and that's probably not going to happen. Go ahead.
I don't think the Congress even has that ability, but okay, I think it's constitutional.
Okay.
I think it's constitutional,
You're in demand.
not something that can be simply done. But okay, but that's just a comment. In terms of elections here, first of all, I think that if they do go to election, Netanyahu would prefer that it be somewhat similar in timing to that of the United States. That's a guess on my part. In other words, if we're going to have a mess, let's do it all at once. But that's a guess, as I said. There are many reasons to go to elections. There are many reasons to not go to elections. What we've seen so far with Gantz and his blue and white faction is that they're basically horribly corrupt. They sit there and block everything. We still haven't gotten the budget passed. By law, if the budget doesn't pass, we have to go to election. That's the law. It has nothing to do with Netanyahu in that sense. Right now, there's a budget process which allows the budget to be passed, but Gantz and Blue and White faction are blocking it for some really crazy reasons that just don't make sense.
Okay, but they're on the other side of it. They're saying that how can we make a budget when we don't know what Corona is going to do to us and where we're going to need to fund money? So how can we say, well, this is going to get this amount of money and that's going to get that amount of money, and we don't even know?
The answer to that is very simple, even though it's not pleasant. That's what you're there for. You do not know. You have contingencies, and you plan what you know how to plan, and you leave the other things to contingencies. So you have lines in the budget process that are contingent upon something else happening.
All right. So
yeah, that's how you do it. And that's just the way budgets are passed.
All right. So we're going to see if what's going to happen here and if that will be passed. Let's go quickly to a caller. We have joining us Jack from the settlement of New York in the United States. Hi, Jack. Okay. I guess Jack didn't like my description of New York. Come on, have a sense of humor, guys. All right. I mean, if they say that, places like Bethel, Bethlehem, and these are all places mentioned in the Bible. They're Jewish, and they call them settlements and things like that. All right. So we're looking at if the budget is not passed. Netanyahu said that we may be going to fourth elections in November, and this is crazy in my opinion because they're demonstrating nightly in front of Netanyahu's residence, trying to get him out. It's like the left in the United States. I mean, the left is global. That's what they are. They're all for the globalism, and so
we have to understand something.
Yes,
here.
go ahead.
Okay? I don't know how many people that are listening to us know Jerusalem, but they claimed, for instance, this morning that last night there were 10,000 people at Paris Square near the official residence. That is the biggest, stinkiest BS that is possible to imagine. If they were standing there in layers, you couldn't fit 10,000 people in that place.
And especially with Corona, right, where people are supposed to keep social distance, but they don't.
1,000 people demonstrating there is absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Absolute.
Okay. We also know that the media in Israel and the media all over the world is mostly leftist, and they have the leftist agenda, so they're going to inflate numbers. But there are noisy people there every night. This is true, and they're trying to get Netanyahu. They couldn't get him out with voting, so now they're trying to get him out by forcing him out. And it's the same thing like we're seeing in the United States. It's just kind of like derivatives here now in Israel, not as bad as nowhere nearly as bad as it is in the United States. But in the last 3 minutes that we have, what are we looking at, and what about in the United States with elections?
Well, I can't comment a lot about what's going on in the United States because it's just really confusing. I don't understand what anybody is attempting to really get. I mean, what is this whole business with the burning of you burn down buildings and you call that a peaceful demonstration? I don't understand if there is any logic to that. It just doesn't. It's just the media can be liars, but they can't be. Clowns.
I guess it makes enough as much sense as calling the peace now that we have here in Israel, which is leftist, calling it peace when giving up land has only brought us more war and more rockets in our heads. They'll use the word peace and they'll stamp it on whatever they want to legitimize, but that doesn't mean that it's true.
The Peace Now, the organization that calls itself Peace Now is a facade. It never really existed. I think it had a total of something like 12 people in it at one time. It's funded by the New Israel Fund, which means it's funded by George Soros. It has no reality whatsoever other than public relations. This is not a grassroots people movement. It is a bankrolled facade and always has been.
All right. So how do you see all of this ending up? We only have another 2 minutes left now. Where do you see all of the information, all of the news, all of what's happening? What do you predict as a scientist, or what do you think it's going?
Everything that we're hearing from these imitation journalists is rubbish and nonsense. Pardon me. I'm being impolite. I realize that. I beg people's pardons, but the reality is that there is no reality here.
Explain.
So we really do not have sufficient information to express an intelligent viewpoint when all we're hearing is basically nonsense. You stated it correctly. They tried to change the government in a democratic electoral process. They failed, so they're looking for different ways. Mm-hmm. And they're trying everything they can think of.
Do you think it's good that Israel goes to new elections in November?
I don't know. Right now, the surveys, which have never been of any level of trustworthiness, are claiming that Netanyahu is losing ground. But as I said, they have never been reliable, and I have 30 years of data to show that they've never been reliable. So it's impossible to know if elections would be beneficial in terms electorally. Certainly, as you said. In terms of the economy, it's a bad idea. But if the present governing coalition is not functioning, then we probably don't have a choice.
And what would happen if war broke out in between then?
I don't understand the question.
I mean, if all of a sudden, God forbid, let's say Iran attacks Israel and we find ourselves in a war, how would a non-functioning government function?
No. That's not a point. The government on that sort of stuff always functions. There's a security cabinet.
You have 10 seconds.
It's the IDF. They take over things. That's not an issue whatsoever. Not at all.
Nothing to worry about, you're saying.
Not at that on that side of things. Absolutely not. Absolutely not even a little bit.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. When we get back, we're going to be talking about an interesting news story that is coming out now and making waves about all these disappearing children around the globe. We'll talk more about that when we get back.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Did you know this psalm and many others were composed by a Jewish shepherd and musician who later became a king? Would you like to know some of the inner meanings of psalms to help you connect with God and strengthen your soul? An exciting and easy-to-read book is now available which will help you do just that. Software for the Soul, Psalms for Everyone, available on Kindle, Audible, and Amazon.com. Software for the Soul.
Modesty at the beach? It isn't just about body image, it's about feeling good. Modest swimsuits, so we don't get burned by the sun.
So we won't get ogled by strangers.
So we'll feel free to express ourselves without the need to expose ourselves.
Let Marcy Modest help you to cover up what you want, how you want.
Made in Israel. Visit marcymodest.com. That's MARSEA modest.com.
And get a 10% discount on your first purchase.
2 new shows on Israel News Talk Radio.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and we're speaking with Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. He is a researcher, and he commentates on Mideastern world issues, and he's here to talk to us about a phenomena that is only now really being talked about it in the news, that's been missing so long since coronavirus has been taking over the news headlines, and that is the phenomena of missing children all over the world. Children go missing, and we're not talking 5 or 500, but tens of thousands in different countries, adding up to I don't even know what numbers. Here to tell us more about that, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
Well, first of all, first correction is we're not talking about tens of thousands, we're talking about hundreds of thousands. And I'll give you the numbers in just a moment. And we're not talking about a news story that's come out now but it's stuff that I've been researching for the last few days, and I've been totally shocked by what I've discovered. So let me start with some numbers just so people understand what it is we're talking about. In 2018, the last year that we have numbers for, there were a total of 3.8 million births in the United States. That's the lowest birth rate in absolute numbers, not in weighted numbers. In absolute numbers, it's the lowest birth rate in the United States for the last more than 3 decades. So the United States is simply not creating babies. Okay? So under 4 million, as I said, 3.7 million. Out of that, 480,000 children in the same year disappeared in the United States. And I've not heard a single politician of any stripe even mention it, much less decry it or shout that this is a horrible thing to happen.
Horrible.
Now, just so nobody thinks that I'm saying anything nasty about the United States, if we look at the UK, it's 113,000.
Every year? Every year?
Every year.
That just sounds too astonishing to think, and that it's never talked about. It sounds like something that's hidden. All right, before we continue, let's go to a caller. We have our caller back, Jack from New York. Hi, Jack. What's your comment or question?
Hello, how are you doing?
How you doing, Jack? What's up?
Well, thank you so much. I want to bring up an issue today which I think is a bit important for Israel as an important ally of the United States in the Middle East.
Well, if it's not on topic, then we can't take your call. Is it on topic?
What?
Is it on topic? Is it about what we're talking about now?
It's a bit different, but it refers to your topic.
Okay, just a moment, Jack, because Mordechai, our caller, I don't really know who Jack is. I think he comes on with different names each week, but I think he wants to make a little bit of a grandstand now. It's up to you whether we take the call. We're live. It's up to you.
Yeah, let's hear what if he has a question. That's a
okay, Jack. Go for it. We have a very nice guest. He wants to hear from you. Go ahead, Jack.
So in these days, we saw a lot of dangerous actions by Iran, such as their military parade and also their agreement with China. I think that agreement sent a severe red alarm to Israel and also Saudi Arabia. I think Israel must pay more attention to Iran's strengthening steps. They just try to solve their economic problems, which was hit by Donald Trump by reimposing sanctions. And to be honest, if they could solve their economy, they will be the strongest country in the Middle East. And I think Israel must be aware of that.
Mordechai?
Yeah, yes. What's your question? I don't understand what you're driving for.
Jack, what's your question?
What? My question is that isn't it important for Israel to stop the relationship between Iran and China and to help not to that agreement to be compromised?
And how do you
clearly an issue of that nature is something that of which we don't have control. We don't control either Iran or China. We can try to influence China because we do have correct relations with them, but they're not a close friend. They're a mild friend. They're for instance, India is much closer to us than China is, but we can try to influence China, but it's not something that we have a great deal of control. You're certainly not incorrect. You're certainly not wrong. It's an issue of concern.
Jack, I wanted to ask you how you would propose going about doing it. Can you answer that in a sentence, very briefly?
What?
How would you go about doing that? You're saying that Israel should try to stop this relationship from forming. So I'm asking you, how would you go about doing that?
I think they should attack Iran's proxy in the Middle East, like Syria or somewhere.
But Israel
else,
is doing that. Israel is doing that. And what does it have to do? What does it have to do with China?
They should do it more. They should do it more.
Okay. Mordechai, you want to say anything else?
No, I think he's made his point. I think his point is it's a reasonable point. I don't think there's a great deal that we can do about it, but I think
Jack, are you Jewish?
A reasonable point.
Jack, are you Jewish?
No, I'm Christian.
Are you from Iran originally?
No.
What is your accent from? Where is your accent from?
I'm originally from Egypt, and I immigrated to the United States about 3 years.
So you're a Coptic Christian from Egypt?
Yes.
And you're would you consider yourself pro-Israel or anti-Israel? Where would you place yourself?
I'm pro-Israel, and I support Trump's policy toward Israel.
Okay. All right. So then you should be happy to know that exactly what you suggested Israel is doing. We are supposedly, I don't know if they've taken credit for things or not, but supposedly it's believed that Israel and or the United States is attacking Iranian bases, weaponry, etc. that they're trying to get into Syria, into the Hezbollah, in Lebanon, etc. And those things are being attacked, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if it slows them down. So far, it seems like it is. Thanks for your call, Jack.
Thank you
for calling in. Appreciate it. All right, Mordechai, getting back to missing children, because I know that's what you wanted to talk about, because people don't know about this phenomena, how large it is, how great it is when we come to numbers.
The numbers are horrendous. I mean, I'm just, I don't know how to react to it. It's so shocking. Just let me read off a few numbers quickly. As I said, 480,000 in the States, 113,000 in the UK, 20,000 in Spain, 45,000 in Russia, 96,000 in India, 100,000 in Germany, 45,000 in Canada. I won't go on because it's too crazy.
And this is every single year.
Correct.
So in Germany, I'm just looking at these stats here now myself. Germany, 100,000 children are reported missing each year. Canada, over 45,000 children being reported missing each year. Australia, 20,000 children every year missing. Now, some of this could be kids that run away and they don't want to be found, and some of this could be kids who are actually kidnapped and sold.
We don't know the reason for why they're missing.
Okay.
But I can't conceive of an idea that the FBI reports these numbers for the United States and not a single politician comments? Nobody,
all right.
It's not an issue to care about?
All right, let's go to another caller we have joining us. William calling in from the UK, from the United Kingdom. Hi, William.
Yeah, hi.
We only have another 2 minutes, so you have to very quickly say your question.
Has the doctor heard about the fact that the security services around the world are stealing children and prostituting them out to blackmail politicians and officials in high places?
Why do you use the word black? Why? What does it depend on their skin color? On many politicians.
What?
Why do you say black and not just politicians?
When did I say black?
No, you misheard it. He said blackmailing.
Blackmailing? Ah, okay. Thank you. I thank you for the correction. All right. So, Mordechai?
Again, I've just recently watched an hour-long video that talks about this and claiming that there's some activity within the United States government, the President administration, to attempt to get this phenomena under control. As a matter of fact, it goes the other way. I first saw the video, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I started to research the issue. But I don't have a sufficient number of facts to say what is the actual cause of these things, of this phenomena. What I would like to do, and this is totally crazy, I agree, if there are people out there that are listening to this that have any information or can point me to some information so that I can learn more about this and find out something more that I can share with you people, I would be very, very grateful if people would share such information with me. I have a site in front of me right now called Global Missing Kids, which apparently seems to be a quality site. Again, I do not know how to verify if this site is as good as it appears to me, and I could be wrong. I want to be fair. So if anybody knows some real facts and can pass them along to us, I would really appreciate it very much.
My question: does he believe that our politicians are being blackmailed with underage boys and girls?
Okay, well, we'll wait until the next segment. We don't have any time right now. And before you hang up, I want to say I apologize. I heard blackmail and not blackmail. So I apologize to you, William, for calling you on that. All right, we're going to be right back after the break. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Ben-Tekoa, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom! I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and our guest is Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. And we're talking about the global issue of missing children all over the world. We're talking about things that are going on today in politics. But let's first go to a caller we have joining us. I think it's Ibrahim. Where are you calling from? Hello, caller?
Hello?
Yes, hi. Where are you calling from?
Hi, Yes, I'm calling from Egypt.
From Egypt. Okay, great to have you on. What's your comment or question?
I want to say something that is, I think, the big warning for Israel. In Israel, we have seen demonstration every day and corruption by Netanyahu and the official and other officials. But Iranian government is improving itself every day by building and operating ballistic missiles. And today we have seen a new range of Iranian missiles, new kind of underground Iranian missiles.
Right.
And what's your question?
My question is why Israel is becoming so weak?
That's a very strong question. Thank you. Let me see if I can attempt to answer it.
I'm here. Yes. Okay, bye-bye.
You can stay on the line if you like. It's fine. Whatever you prefer. Go ahead, Mordechai.
You're right. These missiles that for the first time they've shot them from underground silos, and that's new, and it's not a nice thing to happen as far as we're concerned. It's certainly something of concern. I'm not convinced that Israel is showing weakness. However, I think that we've been doing a great deal. Much of it, I'm supposing that we've been doing. I'm not certain because nobody is actually taking credit for it. But the series of explosions that have occurred over the past few weeks throughout Iran, in infrastructure, in their nuclear program, in a lot of other places, I think this is something that is going on and is showing actual strength and not weakness. But some of these things need to be done very, very quietly and not in an overly public manner. And sometimes when you do things in that manner, it can look like weakness. So I'm certainly not disagreeing with you. I think your concern is very much correct, but I think things somehow tend to be a little bit more complicated than what we see in the news media.
Yeah, what do they say? Speak softly, but carry a big stick. What?
Well, that was Theodore Roosevelt, and yes,
right.
he was right.
All right, let's go to another caller.
Greater president.
All right, we have Antonio from Washington calling us. Hi, Antonio. What's your comment or question for us here at Israel News Talk Radio?
This statement. The Republican Party did touch bases on the child and sex trafficking that was coming from different countries into the United States. So just to make a clarification on that.
That some of these missing children you're saying are being brought to the United States? Is that what you're saying, Antonio?
Pardon?
You're saying that some of the children that have gone so-called missing have been brought to the United States?
What did you say?
Antonio, why don't you just repeat the main point you wanted to say?
Okay, the point is that a few years ago when Trump was at the border, he made a statement saying that children are being sex trafficking or being imported into the United States, and he did touch bases on it, but he did not give more detail on this situation that's going on right now. Because I guess at the time when people are just trying to get into the border in the United States, they give the kids or sold kids to get into the U.S. But I think it's a bigger issue that needs to be looked on or talked about.
All right. What do you have to say about that, Mordechai?
First of all, thank you. It's an excellent comment. But let me explain something that's going on here. What Trump was talking about is a different issue, as concerning as this one, perhaps. What's happening on the southern border is that people are coming in with children, claiming that these children are their children. And then these children, pardon me for using such a crass word, are being recycled. They're then exported out of the United States and brought in again and again and again, some as many as 10 times, which of course is horribly abusive to the children as well as being very illegal. And that was the problem that Trump was talking about, and he was absolutely correct. But that's not talking about the children going missing in the United States, in the UK, in Canada, in all of these different countries. That's a separate problem, an additional problem concerning children, and it's very good of you to have brought that up, because it's something that people are not aware of, and even people that are aware of it tend to forget it. It's horrible horrible abuse of children.
All right, Mordechai, you were talking about these children. Do you know where the biggest the countries that take in most of these lost or kidnapped children, whatever they are, what these are? Would it be, do you think, the United States or places like maybe Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan?
We do not have any realistic data concerning that. It's a very real question. I wish I could answer you.
And do you know how many are runaways and how many are actually were kidnapped?
We do not know. All we know that these are reported missing.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers are horrific. Remember, we're talking about 12% of all the children being born every year in the United States. 12%.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah.
Wow. And you brought me another article to look at before the show. This is from NPR.org. It says U.S. births in the United States fell to a 32-year low in 2018. And they say that the birth rate is in a record slump. And that means that American citizens today are not having children. And it could be also because a lot of them are not getting married and they're living together, and or alternative lifestyle, as they like to call it. And they're not most of them are not having children, most. What do you have to say about all of this?
First of all, you're absolutely correct. The birth rate, the fertility rate, the female fertility rate in the United States now is down to 1.7. Remember, replacement is 2.1. So it's down to 1.7. So the United States is not renewing its population. No country in Europe is renewing its own. Not a single country. The closest to them all is Poland, which is at 2.1. In other words, barely replacement, no more. There is no country in Europe that is a replacement. There are very few countries in the Middle East that are above replacement. Israel is one of the few.
Yeah. If anybody comes to Israel, they're going to see kids everywhere. It's just amazing. It's beautiful. Just absolutely gorgeous and beautiful to see.
Absolutely marvelous.
Yes.
I go to the playground right near me on Shabbat, and I see hundreds of children playing there, and not a single fight.
That's good to hear. So if a country cannot replenish itself, then maybe, I'll play devil's advocate here, maybe it's right that we have all of these immigrants, or I should say they're not immigrants because they're illegal, but these people are entering the country illegally because they need to fill the manual jobs and other jobs that a new generation of Americans are not able to completely fill. Same thing with Europe and the Muslims that are immigrating into Europe. What would you have to say about that?
Well, you have to differentiate between the United States and Europe on that. First of all, the vast majority, and again, this is not a nice thing to say, the vast majority of these migrants that come into Europe are not coming in to work. They're coming in to get free things, and very, very high percentage of them never get jobs. Never. In the United States, it's slightly different. The issue is, had they come in legally and done things properly, for instance, like Trump's wife, who came in as a legal immigrant, that would be fine. You're right. The place does need workers, does need people who can work and who wish to work. The problem is that when they come in illegally, then you're getting a very large portion of them that are coming in are actually criminals. Remember, MS-13, 30,000 armed terrorists, that most of whom came into the United States illegally. And these are controlled by Hezbollah. These are the people that are causing over 100,000 dead Americans every year with drugs. Drugs are poison. They're being poisoned by Hezbollah and by Iran.
Mordechai, we have less than 1 minute left. What do you want to leave us with?
I don't want to leave people with poison. That's horrible. What I'm saying is, if people have data that they can send it to me, I would be more than happy and would be very, very pleased next week to talk about something a little bit more optimistic if somebody can tell me what's going on here. This issue of missing children simply horrifies me.
Yes, as it should, and as it should everyone, and also the value system of people in the United States today, where we see such a low birth rate, the lowest in decades. This is something that should be disturbing as well. That people don't find marriage and having children as big of a value as it used to be. That, it seems to me it's just more selfish type of living. Do what you want, when you want, with who you want, whenever you want, and then you move on to another, whatever. And it just, for me, personally, it's a sad state of affairs, but we'll have to look more into this. And thank you for being on the show, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
Thank you for having me.
And if you have any opinions, you agree, disagree, you can disagree with me. That's fine. We are tolerant. We want to hear from you. You might have some really good points that we didn't consider here, and we'd like to hear from you. You can write us at info@israelnewstalkradio.com or directly to me, Tamar, Tamar, at israelnewstalkradio.com. Thanks for being with us.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the israelnewstalkradio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.